I will ban your ass. You will be back.
Now, whenever we want to get to the bottom of things, one thing we do is we always call on the mighty general. And this is one time, point blank, I have to call on the mighty general because it's too much sometimes for even me to do all this. And there is the general who handle this position. That's why we call him General Sarah Sultan Seti. And this is the general. So without further ado, let's check out what the general has to say in this matter.
And I know Ray gonna get on you too. He's gonna be the one to ban. Why the Palestinians and the Israelis are both thieves of African land. Let's talk about it. Let's get back on these scrolls. Let's get back on these scrolls. Let's go to work. Now, as we did, we busting up this information, you know, not only when we say that Canaan or what they call Palestine, and right there, rooted in there, Palestine, Palin, you see, has no place in the Bible. People got to understand that. Had no place in the Bible. That's wrong. You see, that's wrong. Now check this out. Where's that map at? These are on the maps, man. There's some more. I got some more maps.
Now notice what he called it. Palenstein. Take note of that key word. Palenstein.
Where is the rest of my maps? Let me see. They might be right here. Let me see. Okay, that's not it. Let me see if it's over here. No, just hold on. We about to work. We about to work. Okay, that's not it either. Must be this one. Yep, right here. I think it is. Is it? It should be right here. I don't understand that. Okay. It must be further down here. Let me see. Okay. I think this is it right here. Yep, it is. I found it. This is it right here. Nah. You got this map here. See? And they even playing with that date right there. When you talk about the Aryans, you see the ancestral homeland. You see, and a lot of times they want to put it up there today, what they call Ukraine. They not from there. Okay, I can tell you that right now. Their homeland is far up into what they call Russia. You see, it ain't right there. You know, they want to give themselves a more southern origin than reality. You see what I'm saying? So even when you talk about the Arabs, see, here they show you, you see, that they were not original to the landmass. You see, they were not original to the landmass. That they come, you know, up out of that you know, what they call, matter of fact, where's, let me get that one out. Let me go to one. Yeah, let me see. I know this one, I got to go to work. I got to put it on. I got to put it on because they might be in here tonight. I got to have that. I got to have it. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Right here. So I can work out. So you see right here. You see what? You see this lower. star right there. That's the Caucasus Mountains. They're not from there. Okay, I just want to be clear. That's just the gate, one of the gates that they went through. You see, to come down into what we call today the Middle East and this, that, and the third, which ain't really the middle or nothing.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
That is based on again the British. You see, that's based on the British. You see what Moscow is. You see, that's too far west. You see, that's too far west. They didn't start there. You see, they start from behind what they call the Uralian Mountains. We got to talk about it. You see, if we're going to make some understanding of this, okay? They come up off of that West Siberian plain, that's Central Siberian plateau.
That's right.
You see, this is where they come from. Now, you see that they even you see them come down on India. You see they come down on India. They say about 1500 BC. I don't even know. I believe that those dates right there are exaggerated. You see, they did come down, but they didn't come down at that time. They didn't even have no presence. You see, majority of them came down with Alexander. That was the first wave. Now, if you're talking about here, you see the Seljuk Turks. Okay, now this is when we talk about the Turks right here. You see, when they come down, when they took over to what you want to call Medina and Mecca and this, that, and the third, and see when the Turks took over that, they took over it from the Byzantine. You see, and a lot of them damn, I believe even under the Byzantine, you didn't have no Lebanon and no goddamn no damn I don't know about Syria, because you got to understand, even when you talk about Syria, that come from Assyria, and that was from Nimrod, the Cushite. You see, so it ain't what you see today with the Arabs. So that right there is also some more plagiarization of African history and nations and so on, and still in our legacy. So even under the Byzantine, you didn't have them nations that Iraqs and no Irans and no Lebanons and none of that. You didn't have that. So it was under the Seljuk Turks. You see what I'm saying? That pale, that pale Arab, and and the Arab want to act like he's different than the Turks, and that's that might be some cultural shit, but they come from the same. They come out the cave. Both of them come out, and one come out the east side of the cave. Some come out the west side of the cave, but they both come up out of the area of the Siberian. You got the Western Siberian plain. You got the Central Siberian plain. You see, that's where they come from. Okay, I don't care which one of them you want to choose. That's the origin of where they come from. Okay, and so it showed again that you see the Byzantine Empire. So it was the Seljuk Turks that took the majority of that land from the Byzantine. So even before the Seljuk Turks, the Byzantine, which is the Eastern Roman Empire, you see what I'm saying? They operated as Romans. You see what I'm saying? And so, I didn't see any jurisdiction even under the Byzantine were any. So those nations that you see there today were put there by the British mandate. They the ones that from the Pakistan, from the Iran, from the Iraq, Kuwait. That's another one that they all that it's all them there. Even where you look on that map and you see all that Emirates, Arab Emirates, and all that shit was put there during the time of the British. Okay? They the one that put all that shit over there. Kuwait was another one. You see what I'm saying? Kuwait was another one where they cut Kuwait off and created a Kuwait, and it very well, it might have been just Arab. You understand what I'm saying? But like I said, they are nothing but imperialists that moved in on that land. That land that you call Arabia today is, the gateway into Africa. You see, it is the gateway into Africa. And so a lot of people have always wanted that real estate. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And and that was one of the reasons why Egypt so
Egypt
guarded
is
Canaan,
the
what today
name
is
given
Israel,
by
because they knew that
Alexander.
it was the gateway into Africa. And so if the Egyptians allowed for foreigners to seize that, it wouldn't be long where they would be in Africa. They would be in Egypt. So, and that's why Tyarka went up and defended, because those were their brothers. You understand what I'm saying? Those were their brothers. And so, when we looking at the Seljuk Turks, they were the ones that primarily went down in there. And when you see the Arab, they was fighting the other Arab, but they came out of the same damn area. Okay, yeah, they're gonna have beefs. Shit, the Arabs got beefs today with one another. You see what I'm saying? So it ain't like you ain't gonna, just because they got a beef, that the Turks are different than, you understand what I'm saying? Shit, you got the Saudi Arabia is fighting with Iran. You see what I'm saying? They fighting with Iran. You see, and so that don't mean shit. You got Iran fighting Yemen. You see, they down there bombing Yemen. Not Iran, but Saudi Arabia is fighting Yemen. You see, Saudi Arabia is fighting Yemen. Shit, you up there. You got the Syrians. Who they fight? They fighting amongst one another. You see, and they fighting against one another. So you got Arabs fighting against Arabs all over the goddamn planet. So don't get it twisted. You see, and so before a lot of that was one of the primary times where a lot of them pale Arabs came down into Arabia in mass. You see, in mass. They ain't been there that long. Quit faking and fronting. You see what I'm saying? The critical thing about it that a lot of people don't talk about, that when Islam opened up, and a lot of people, you got Bilal. You got Bilal, and a lot of people, they venerate Bilal. When I was studying, and I was studying Bilal. How Bilal was the first, what they say, the first Mazarin, but he had far more power than a lot of people. But where he started, he was a slave. You see, the Ethiopians was already in Arabia. Now they talk about that year of the elephant, where the Aksumite emperor, I think is Abraham. What's his name? Abraham, whatever his name was, who supposedly attacked Mecca. You see, and they got this old fairy tale where some birds and shit. You see what I'm saying? They had rocks in their mouth and shit, and they dropped it down on them and whatever that they lost. They went over there to attack Mecca, and somehow they lost. And so a lot of the Ethiopians they were, I guess, captured, and they was made slaves. And so I don't, they try to make it seem as if, that was when a lot of the Ethiopians were made, but they were over there before that. See, the Africans was coming over there to reestablish control. They were already there. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Black Power. That's all. I see you down there, family. Yeah, yeah. Black power. Yeah, but our peoples was already over there. They was trying to reestablish control. When you talk about let's get back in here. See, they don't talk about this. See, when you talking about, you talking about Sumer, you see right there the first you talking about, and we're not gonna argue. We know that Sumer is not more ancient than Africa, but this was one of our family members, and so we have to establish that. And you see, the first dynasty is Kush. See, they put the I in there to fool you. It's Kish, but it's Kush. You see what I'm saying? And you see Susa, but see, this is what they look like. See, this is from the Museum of Susa. You see, this is from the Museum of Susa, and you see that they black skin, and you see that they woolly hair. Now, I was just reading Drusilla Dungy Houston, wonderful Ethiopian of the ancient Kushite Empire. And it just dawned, I read this because she brought up a fact which I've already known, because they hate culture. The Arabs they hate culture. They've been so in them goddamn tents, for so long, where other civilizations had developed, where they were still in the tent. So when it comes to statues and shit and this, that, they just, wherever they at, they just tear them down. You know what I'm saying? And so she brought that up. This is on page 133. It says the Semitic Arab abhors agriculture. It is by these differences in traits that we can unerringly detect race. When the Israelites first appeared in the light of biblical history, they were keepers of flock. Pastorals do not originate culture. So she going in on the Israelite and the Arabians. You see, the Semitic Arabians. She's saying pastorals do not originate culture. The nature of their life renders it impossible. Nomadic people have been the invincible opponents of culture. You see? And so you notice when you watch ISIS over there, they went right on over there into a lot of, when they took over Iraq, they went to a lot of the monuments, I believe at Nimrud and blew it up. They was over there with all type of goddamn chisels and shit, chiseling on the faces. Yeah, and so this was she made clear. You understand what I'm saying? That you could tell, the pastorals and those, they always wandering and shit. You know what I'm saying? And they abhor agriculture. You see, that's what they say. That's what she said. They abhor agriculture. And and I'm gonna get off into it because they talk about they always talking about the southern Arabians are the true Arabs. You see? The true Arab. You see, but don't overuse that word, because it don't, don't overuse it. When you talk about even when you talk about Susa, you see the root of Susa. You see Sudan, Sudra. You see Sumer, Sufi. You see wool. You got the black, but you got the wool. When you talk about the Sufi, you talking about the wool. You talking about the crown on the head. See, they ain't talking about no goddamn hat, about no goddamn turf. They talking about the wool on your head. They talking about they talking about when Daniel 7:9 said, and his hair would be like the pure wool. Pure. That means unmixed. We talking about when he seen God You see what I'm saying? And he gave a description of what he saw. And he said he looked up in the sky and he seen a man sitting on a throne. And you understand what I'm saying? His feet was like brass and the hair on his head was like the pure wool. Okay? So you see right there, you see some of the root, and now a lot of people don't even understand that what they call, especially if you understand the geology of what they call Israel over there, that all you have to do is go up the Jordan. If you go up the Jordan River, whatever is on the west side of the Jordan River, that's Africa. You see, that's on the African tectonic plate. So most of them cities that you talk about, you know, Gaza and all, that's Africa. That's Africa. That's technically, that ain't no, it is Africa. Ain't no technical about it. It's Africa. Ain't no technically, it is Africa. It's on the African plate. So you see the Jordan River is actually what separate, but that's just, you know, so you know that's out, you know, what you call the Middle East is Africa. You see, it broke, and so it culturally and historically, that land has always been, you know, closely related to the culture of Africa. You see what I'm saying? And so let's get over here. So when you talk about, again, Arabia, you talking about the grandsons of Ethiopia, Sudan, Sheba, Dedan, even Midian. People talk about Midian. This is they were considered to be Ethiopians. That was the land where Moses supposedly got his wife from. Nah, see, this is what I was trying to get you. See, so you see the Zagros Mountains right here. You see, that cut all the way, you know, and so all the land behind that is Africa. See, the Zagros Mountains is on a different tectonic plate. You see what I'm saying? That land that's behind the Zagros Mountains and the lower what they call the Zagros folded zone, those mountains are on a different tectonic plate. You see what I'm saying? So you know you going into the mountains. So that land be south of the Zagros Mountains is Africa. Period. Northeast Africa. And so all that renaming Israel. See, that's when they came from behind those mountains. You see, some went towards India, some came towards Northeast Africa today, misnomered the Middle East. So here you see ancient Arabia, kingdom of Sheba, Saba, you know, and so, you know, now we got to understand, I don't want y'all to get caught up into, you know, and you know what, I don't have no problem in saying that, because a lot of times we get caught up in, you know, into the Ethiopian thing. That goddamn Judaism and that Christianity shit is some fairly recent shit, and I can't even allow them to think that they can make it more ancient than what it is. It's garbage. You see what I'm saying? The Nile Valley, the indigenous African spirituality is the only ancient spirituality in the land. When you start seeing Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, you are talking about some fairly recent poison that have been injected into our people. You see what I'm saying? But it show you even from when Africans migrated out of Africa into, you understand, what today is called Southern Arabia, that it was the Africans that popped, not the people that you see there today. You talking about thousands of years of mixture. Now you see a different culture and a different, you know, you see some remnants of the people that's there, but it's a difference today. You see, and they're claiming the land as if that, you know, and the culture that they profess today as if it's the original ancient culture, and it's not. It's not. You see what I'm saying? It's not. And so, yes, I use Sheba, but in the Bible it says Sheba and Saba, see, is the sons of Sudan. See, that's where it would change shit. See, now you see Arabia, see Yemen, automatically you're going to think of Islam, you're going to think of, the Sabaeans of today, and that's garbage. We got to get rid of that. We talking about we talking about the Ethiopia of the Bible and of the ancient world is Sudan, and you have to look to the Nubians. You talking about the pitch black Nubians that was on the wall. Those are the mothers and fathers of the original cultures that was in that land, including Mesopotamia and including Arabia. These was Nubians. These was black, dark black, woolly head. You see what I'm saying? We got to talk about that. Wait a minute. Let me see here. Yep. Okay. Nah. Even see another thing that a lot of people don't talk about. You see, and see, this is in the occult, that they talk, even when you talk about the 12 tribes, you see, even when you talk about the 12 tribes, how, people don't see, through Joseph, that two of those tribes that Joseph, that his father, Jacob, adopted. Now, this is all occult information. Ephraim and Manasseh. You see, Manasseh. And so, these are, Africans. You see that, now we know that this is all, mythological, but it's some presence there. Now, a lot of people don't know that Ephraim, when they crossed over from Egypt and established themselves in Canaan, the Ephraimites was the first tribe that were custodians of the ark. You see, the ark, and they were the first custodians of the ark. And it show you because that Em. See, we talking about Em and the Egypts. Mizraim was the only nation in the Bible that had that suffix of Em. You see, and it signified giants, because a lot of them giants, the Rephaim and the Philistine, and it signified giants, and also it signified divinity, such as in the angels, the seraphim and the cherubim, and and so you have to understand it's rooted in that. So it's also just like you got Elohim. You see, Elohim. So Egypt was the only nation to whose descendants, had that particular suffix of Em. And like I say, it was something that signified divinity, and it signified the giants. You see, so even the Philistine, which is in what today is Gaza, they were in Gaza, the Philistine. You see what I'm saying? Those were Cushites. These were the Hamites that was in that land before any of the people that you see here today. And so, when we break this shit down, we go to the documents. We go to the documents, and I'm gonna tell you. And like I say, I'm just getting out my work. And I'm just getting out my work. And I guarantee you, make sure y'all get on Patreon, because tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and get busy. But I'm gonna have everything in alignment so that y'all understand that. Yes, Ephraim, okay, who was one of the sons of Joseph by an Egyptian woman. We understand that this is all allegorical and occult information, but You know, just like this brother, he teaches, and I'm gonna drop that part in there so you understand that. I'm gonna drop that part in there so you understand that what he spoke about that. It says right here. Here we go. I'm gonna read it to you. It's right here. Just it's too light because I got my thing in it. But it's on page 58, and it says in Hebrew. Listen, names ending with "im" are usually applied to angels and giants. You see, and it says the Negro Egyptians reached a height of 8 feet according to the Hebrew cubit, but over 11 feet in agreement with the Egyptian cubit. You see, Ludim was also called Lud in Lydia, from whence came the Negro Etruscans who settled in Italy. God called the Negro Egyptians in Isaiah 19:25 my people. Okay? So it said Ethiopia ruled Egypt during the era of Isaiah. So Mizraim, you see, Ephraim, and all of those. And so Egypt, it shows that Egypt was of divinity. You understand what I'm saying? They spoke of Egypt in the Bible in etymology of being of divinity and that they were giants. So even Goliath was of the bloodline of the Egyptians. They didn't, and I know you read it, you rooted for David. You rooted for David. You understand what I'm saying? You was on the wrong side. You see, but family, this is a prime time for us to uh uh open up the scrolls and and break this information down, and we will do that. And I guarantee you, I'm gonna go over it tonight. I'm gonna tighten things up. You know what I'm saying? And as long as people eyes is open to the situation, Mr. Do you know about what part he played in World War One and Two? Uh, Let me throw that in there. Mr. General said, "Do you know what part did Ethiopia play in World War One and World War Two?" Now, I do know that during World War Two, that the Italians committed genocide on our people. I do know that. That they don't talk about that, but Italy went down into Africa, and because they hadn't received any colonial lands like the rest of the Europeans, that uh they saw this as an opportunity to take land, and so yeah, the Italians attacked Ethiopia. Haile Selassie did what he could do for a minute, and he fled. He had to, I ain't gonna say he had to flee, but he fled. The Italians took over. I know they took over Addis Ababa, some of the major cities, but they didn't have control of the whole country. You see what I'm saying? So it was, it was always, a resistance movement going on. So uh, they don't consider Ethiopia as ever being colonized because they never had control over the whole country. Eventually, the British, along with the Ethiopians, helped push the Italians out of there. You see what I'm saying? But the atrocities that the Italians committed on Ethiopia while they was in there is mind-boggling. Because they used, at that time, modern weaponry. You see why our people didn't have that. They even dropped mustard gas on our peoples over there in Ethiopia. And so we lost a lot of our family during that time. You see what I'm saying? But yeah, and so I know that in part two. Now, part one, World War I, I'm not so familiar with. I'm not so familiar with World War One. Why did Britain help Ethiopia? Uh, well, colonialism. They saw that they was going, they wanted Eritrea and in certain areas over there for themselves. You see what I'm saying? And so, they wanted some of that waterway. You see what I'm saying? Just like the Suez Canal. You see, just like the Suez Canal. So, and it was a problem with the British too. After they got the Italians off their back, there was some problems with the British too. Yeah, there was some problems, because they had to fight them. They had to fight the British. Uh, I believe in a couple of them situations. You see, but now that you brought it up, what I do is I go into my information and I get my information out. And if you come back tomorrow, we'll most definitely touch on it in a deeper.
Well, there it is from the mighty general himself. No more to be said based on what he has just laid down. And what he has just laid down is facts to crack backs and the heat of the damn street. The general rides again, as I would say, because he dropped it perfectly and to the point. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So we definitely gonna say, we definitely gonna put it there that this, you can see this is fire. You know what I'm saying? And we gonna give him a 4 of those. This is fire. And you guys need to get up in there and do the same. You know what I'm saying? Because if the general can be putting it down like this, many other people can put it down by getting over to the General Sawa Sultan Seti Patreon account and getting busy on your studies. Like I said, when it comes to the situation between Israel and Palestine, now you see the situation. You have seen many invasions, like I said, the Arabs, even the Crusaders, have been plaguing Africa, coming out of Rome and this and that and third. So the people that you see in Israel today, to me, are no more than really Romans, pushing in by way of America, pushing into that land and trying to get that strategical point, raid, rob, steal, and the whole nine. But like I said, the general have explained it in more ways than one who's who, who's what, and the position that they have played. So if you get over to the general, you can get it a lot more better in his Patreon account and so forth on. But now we're going to move on to another one, which is this one.
What happens when the prostate enlarges and the
We gotta
urine
pay the
channel gets
bills.
tight? If you have an enlarged
Gotta pay
prostate,
the
do this
bills.
50.
We're going to be talking about what's going on with Donald Trump, what's going on with Joe Biden, and other big stories in the news today. I have with me today Judge Joe Brown, the infamous Joe Brown. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, I got to be infamous. Hey, how about this famous? Anyway, I'll take infamous because I upset some people.
Oh,
I
well,
like to step on feet when they
Yeah.
need to be stepped on.
well, you're a truth teller, which is always going to irritate people that don't like the truth. So I appreciate you coming on. Everyone that I mentioned that you were coming on was like, oh, I love that guy. So I appreciate you taking time. So we're in a situation where I don't know where to start. We've got a former president with a bunch of legal nightmares, and we've got a sitting president with a bunch of legal nightmares. But since Trump is in the news this morning with his lawsuit, New York versus Donald Trump and the Trump Corporation, wanted to get
That's the
your
one
take.
that the DA decided to file as a civil suit to protect supposedly the constituents. I see what has happened with the trial judge on that. And I say this, I've been involved in criminal law for about a half century, all right? And I was a prosecutor. I ran the public defender's office in the Memphis area. I've been in private practice since the 70s. Well, no longer. I retired from that. I've been a criminal court judge, got elected to 2 8-year terms. Before I did that 15 years doing binding contractual arbitration on a TV show. Okay, so I speak in terms of that. I think what has been done so far is absolutely ridiculous. Somebody suspended somebody's business license for supposedly committing fraud, except the testimony from the victims of fraud is that they knew what was going on. It wasn't fraud. They made a lot of money from it. They understood what was being said up front, and it's like somebody saying, we're going to charge Joe Brown for writing you a bad check. And the person says, it's not a bad check. I went to the bank. I presented my ID, the check. I got my cash. It's not bad. Well, we're still going to find that's a bad check. That's absolute garbage. And I think we're having a problem right now wherein our judges are being entirely too political. This time on the left, some time ago it was on the right, and it flips back and forth throughout our country's history, but we have a constitution that's designed to tamp that down. But one of our problems right now is too many of the judges are essentially amateurs. And why do I say that? If you got referred to a doctor and you went to the doctor's office, he's got the staff and everything, but you found he had never done an internship in a hospital nor a residency, you wouldn't feel too confident because everything he would have been prepared to do for you would be out of a book rather than actual hands-on experience. So you get large law firms now, and instead of the senior partners having hundreds of trials under their belts, they've got 5 or 6. And the minor partners have been in there for 7, 8, 9 years, and they've argued 2 motions. I can remember having 10, 15, 20 trials a month and scuffling to get them done. And now somebody says, oh, I've got a trial in 4 months. I can't do anything. Well, how many of you had? This will be my 3rd trial. Well, son, you need to get it together. You have to learn the efficiencies of being a lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a lot of judges that are essentially rookies. Instead of being experts in what they do, they're where they are. You have that with the district attorneys too. A lot of them are political. And I've already expressed my opinion on this thing with the civil matter, which just doesn't match the evidence. And the relief is disastrous, which should have been denied. You don't strip somebody of their ability to do business with that kind of flim-flam lack of evidence. Next thing, let's look at Bragg. Bragg has indicted Trump supposedly for bribing Stormy Daniels not to embarrass him. Well, I don't know where Bragg went to law school or what they teach there now, but half century ago when I was at UCLA, we got taught to flip the script. Ask the question another way. If you have to pay somebody to keep them from embarrassing you, that's called blackmail. It's a felony. So in other words, Bragg indicted the victim of felony blackmail for being blackmailed and paying off. But okay, there was a nominal civil suit. It was settled. American law encourages settlements, whatever the merits of the case, and sometimes the settlement will be for an amount less than the anticipated attorney fees and costs. There's usually a gag provision that goes along with nobody tells what the basis of this was about, or you're in trouble with some court. So Bragg turns around and he indicts the corporate entity for failing to explicitly lay out why they paid Stormy Daniels. Well, there's a Bragg gag provision in effect. So if the corporate entity had filed this detailed public record, they would have violated the gag provision. So a corporation got indicted for following the law, which is absolutely preposterous. Let's drop down to Georgia. Now, I'm not going to say too much about the lady because I went to law school with her father and know him well from years in the past, and he was kind of a militant guy. What I do find with her is in some of the counts on the 92-page indictment that I downloaded. It's public record. And essentially, it's all characterized by one particular count where she says that Trump feloniously encouraged his followers to look at or read Newsmax. Now, I read Newsmax articles and I look at some of the stuff they put out, and I've told people they should peruse this stuff themselves. So I guess if I said that to somebody in Georgia, I would have been committing a felony. I think that's absolutely ridiculous when people start saying that exercise of the sacred First Amendment, the very first, ratified in 1791 as the foundation for the Bill of Rights, when you exercise that, somehow or another, you are committing a criminal act. And that looks very much out of the playbook for the National Socialist Workers' Party. If anybody doesn't recognize that, it's probably because you are more familiar with the German acronym. It's spelled N-A-Z-I, Nazi. And that's straight out of their playbook. It's fascist. It's classical. I had a science major, art science, and I also had a minor that I wound up declaring as my major was political science. And in political science, that is a methodology of fascism, to destroy the ability of an opponent to reply to an assertion that another political faction is attempting to assert. And when you make that reply criminal, that is one of the primary elements of fascism, because the other one kicks in, and we've all heard this. Joseph Goebbels, Nazi minister of propaganda, Adolf Hitler, Heinrich Himmler, they all knew this. Tell a lie long enough and loud enough, and you can get anyone, including the liar, to believe it. And when you only are allowed to hear one side of the truth, that allows that truth to be perpetrated as a lie. It allows that lie to be perpetrated as something that will be believed, and it is a common element of deception. I may have said that wrong. In other words, let's take that back again. In other words, when you allow the criminalization of an opposition position, then what happens is you've got free reign to tell any lie you want. And that is something that oftentimes those who are self-righteously into a position are asserting. We don't want, what do they call it now, political mistruth? Well, who's to say what is mistruth other than what the national consensus says it is? But you don't want the national consensus to have an opportunity to build, so you say it's criminal. And you see this, it was on Twitter, it's not so much on X, but it's still there. It's in Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and people will be demonetized on YouTube for countering the supported position. You can't mention certain words, even though it may be on the front line of a newspaper, front page of the newspaper. There are a lot of things that are very scary, and I've been around long enough.
Pay the
Hey guys,
bills.
welcome to Forward. We're a new type of doctor's office that's providing.
Pay the bills.
Around long enough. I was in the class of '69 at UCLA, and I've been around long enough to have seen what happens. I worked with Ed Bradley, Ed Bradley, mayor of Los Angeles, Harold Washington. One of my former law partners was at one time mayor of Memphis. I've known several of the mayors. A vice president of the United States was a client of the law firm I was with before I left it 30 some years ago to go into the judicial thing. And a couple of presidents speak to me when they see me, a former president. So I know people who have been in places I've consulted for representatives in the U.S. House and a senator or two. So I can get around. I know some foreign dignitaries. I've met prime ministers of nations, and we've talked. So I get the idea. And there's always this temptation to restrict the other side, but you have to back off from it even when you have the power, because in politics, things flip very quickly. You want to say, I want to do this now for everybody's good, but you may not stay in power long, and then the other side does it, and whoever has whatever it takes, they can impose that, and nobody gets anywhere, and you get into Orwell's Animal Farm. And if you are too lazy to read Animal Farm, you can Google Animal Farm, and the CIA put up almost a word-for-word animation back in 1952 that is still good to look at because it's still high quality. I think Disney had something to do with it back when Disney used to be Disney. And you get the idea. The animals have a revolution. They take over a human farm and they come up with rights for animals. And then the pigs stage sort of a counter-revolution. They come in and they start imposing these draconian rules, and then the Constitution changes from all animals are equal to all animals are equal / but pigs are more equal than others. And they have a pack of dogs that they use for enforcement. So we're going there right now. Now let's drop down to Florida. Trump is indicted for supposedly violating the Secrets Act. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court spoke rather eloquently in a number of concurring opinions in a 1988 case. It's called U.S. Department of Navy versus Egan, E-G-A-N. And if you read the concurring opinions, you get this out of it. Under the Constitution, the president is 1, the commander-in-chief of the armed services, and 2, he's chief diplomat for the country. Following from that, he has the absolute authority and power to either classify or declassify documents. He can override the State Department. By the way, they're part of his cabinet. They work for him to advise him. He can override the Joint Chiefs of Staff. By the way, he's their superior officer with ultimate command authority. If there is an act of Congress that deviates from that congressional standard, the case is Marbury versus Madison, 1803, 220 years ago. It says if Congress passes an unconstitutional act, the president may disregard it, and an appellate court may, in fact, declare it unconstitutional, which is the situation. What he is charged with is removing documents from the White House, guarded by the Secret Service. Sorry about that. What he's doing, accused of doing, is removing documents from the White House where they were guarded by the Secret Service. Now, to begin with, the documents by statute were prepared by the CIA and the NSA. The exclusive purpose of the CIA is, quote, to digest intelligence information and reduce it to an understandable form for benefit of the president. So it was prepared for him. And Trump has an didactic memory like Clinton did, like I do. And once you read it, it's up there. It's not going anywhere. And meanwhile, the same Secret Service guarded the premises at Mar-a-Lago. So Trump removes it. Why doesn't he issue a formal written declaration? Well, Egan says he doesn't have to. He said by any means he chooses, either partially, fully, or whatever the case may be. So the removal is a de facto declassification, at least going to his premises. So they're there, these papers. The act that prohibits it is quite arguably unconstitutional. Next thing, the decisions say that right of the president, that authority of the president to declassify is the same as his authority to pardon. It's unquestionable. You can't touch it. You can't gainsay it. There's another factor here, and I think I know where that one's going because I actually got to take my time going over the downloads of the three, not one, three laptops that Mr. Hunter Biden seems to have left behind with the repairman after we swore in the repairman and perused his downloads of the three laptops left with him. He did that before turning the instruments over to the FBI after he had repeatedly tried to get their attention. He couldn't until Mayor Giuliani got involved, Attorney Giuliani got involved in the process. But in any event, what else is going on is this. Had he turned the documents over, there is a good chance, a high probability that those documents contain incriminating evidence against the current administration. So if you have evidence of criminal activity, you don't turn that evidence over to someone to destroy, conceal, or whatever, who may be implicated in the potentially criminal activity. Now, that is a sham case, and that would have no business surviving appeal. Now, all three of them may get an initial trial court conviction, but there is no way under American law that those convictions, if they occur, should stand. The other thing is the Bill of Rights was brought in 1791 after the Constitution was ratified in 1789 just to prevent those things from happening. We see them now because the current administration seeks to abrogate the First Amendment. They act like the Second Amendment did not exist and should not exist. And the Second Amendment is number two because it backs up number one. And then they are really getting into the search and seizure thing with number four. And number five, the right to remain silent, they want that thrown in the wastebasket. So we have to be very vigilant because we are in grave danger of being turned into a fascist entity. Now, people keep excusing this. I don't care. I hate Trump. He's the Baba Yaga, the boogeyman. Well, you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used in evidence, etc., etc. Those are known as Miranda rights. Well, Mr. Miranda was not a good guy. And if we had the attitude in 1964 that we do now, we would never be familiar with the articulation of your Fifth Amendment rights because Miranda being a bad guy would have resulted in, no, we can't do this. So some people say Mr. Trump is the boogeyman, so he's horrible, they say. So we can't let him get away with it, so they're willing to throw literally the baby out with the bathwater. It's their own rights so they can get somebody. But you see in America, the script gets flipped. Boom. And it may apply to them one day and they won't like it. I'm sure they won't. So I know when I'm on the criminal bench and there's a motion to suppress, or at least when I was before I retired, almost quarter of a century ago now, what winds up happening is the guy in front of you is accused of some very bad things sometimes, but justice is blind. So you can't see who that is. You have to apply the law, whoever it is.
The fastest way to increase the length of your manhood if you want to increase the size of your tool and make it stronger and harder, go to...
And it may hurt you to do it. It may be a serious felon, but what the state did to get the evidence they got, if you allow that precedent to stand, will harm a lot of innocent people. I'll give you an example. Now, you know and I know that all of us have been to a Super Bowl game party, right? And everybody's got bets on who's going to do what at what quarter. Well, in most states, even Nevada, that's illegal. That's a crime. But because you got the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizures, two rookie cops can't drive down the street and say, "Hey, Charlie, look at all those cars parked in front of that house. I bet they've got a Super Bowl pool going on, and we can go in there and bust some guys for illegal gambling." Well, you can't do that. That's against the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So we have these sacred rights that weren't set up as criminal rights. They were set up as rights for ordinary citizens to be protected from the abuse of governmental authority. It just happens that throughout most of American history, that authority has been brought to bear when it's a criminal prosecution, but it's still a set of rights that the citizens have so their government does not get to be authoritarian. Remember, the founders had within their lifetimes left somebody that they felt was being authoritarian, that is the British Empire. So we seem to have forgotten that, like a whole lot of other things that are going on now. And one of the problems that's inherent in this whole bit is we got this whole country, 65 million people. So 1, 2, 3, 4 folks say, well, I got elected to this office. I'm in New York, I'm in Georgia, I'm in Florida, I'm in another one in New York. And the 4 of us decide that we don't like this boogeyman being so strongly supported as president. So the 4 of us are going to cut him off from being able to run for this office to save America. Now, people say, well, they got indicted. Yeah, but I got a whole lot of people acquitted as a trial lawyer, even though they got indicted. Damn them, most of my clients were. Well, all of my clients got acquitted when we went to trial.
So indicted does not mean guilty.
No, it's just an accusation where the jury just hears one side of things. So that doesn't mean anybody has done anything. In fact, charged to the jury, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Although the defendant in this case has been indicted, you are to attach no significance to that indictment other than it being a simple accusation. The defendant is possessed of a witness that stands strongly for him throughout all stages of these proceedings, and that is the presumption of innocence. It stands with him until it is removed by proof beyond a reasonable doubt, etc., etc., etc. And you may presume that the indictment is, in fact, a mistake until the prosecution proves otherwise. So all of these people going around, he's indicted, well, he's accused. Well, see, this is not how America is supposed to work. You're not supposed to just get rid of somebody because you make an accusation. And we have innocence projects all across the country where innocent people are turned out of jail because somebody didn't tell the truth. We had the Rampart scandal in Los Angeles, the Rampart precinct. 128 people had to be released from the California penitentiaries because detectives falsified evidence and grand juries indicted these people. So we have our law, and the fact that people can stand up and advocate the way they do is a result of those laws. So there is no reason why we should be countenancing somebody going out and saying, after 230 some years, let's throw these rules out because there's a guy we don't like. That's not the point. And the other thing is, some of our biggest heroes in the country's history, Abraham Lincoln, amongst other things, started out as somebody that a lot of people didn't like. So we still have that. Some people love Ronald Reagan. Some people detest him. Some people love FDR, most of whom are dead now because that's quite a few generations ago, and some hated him. So it all depends on where you're going. A lot of people detested Jimmy Carter, and now a lot of people love him. So history has a lot to do with the perspective. And things that you did not know, you might find out. So we need to be very careful of that. Now, I've gone on at some length, I guess. So
It's okay. It's
Trump,
fantastic.
and then now Biden.
Yeah, using that same logic in rule of law, let's presume that Trump is innocent until they go through their
Proven
thing.
guilty
Let's also presume that Joe Biden is innocent
until proven guilty. Now,
until
here's the
proven guilty.
difference. Here's the difference. In law, there is a thing where you say you want a motion, you want a directed verdict, and what you say is even if everything the prosecution or the plaintiff says is true, there's no wrong that's been committed. So when I'm talking about Trump, the difference between Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden is this. If everything they accuse Mr. Trump of is in fact true, he has not committed a crime under American law. Meanwhile, let's go to Mr. Biden. He's innocent until he's proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, assuming a prosecution is initiated. There is this thing about the box of classified documents found behind the Corvette in the garage of the Biden property. That box is mentioned in those laptops, and there is a back and forth about directing certain people to go look in that box, or a description that one could reasonably interpret as being the box behind the vet. And when those documents were removed from the White House, Mr. Biden was vice president. He did not have that authority that the president has to declassify. So it was illegal taking them out. But now they say he didn't mean to. But wow, there is that document that keeps repeating. It's called an email, and it keeps saying, did they get a chance to look in the box, or direct them to the box, etc.? And since it's obvious from the references in the emails back and forth between Hunter and Joe Biden that the individuals in question are foreign agents, since there is also in those laptops video from the modern White House tapes, which aren't just sound, they have video, and some of the videos have some things in there that would further explain why that information that, well, we don't know exactly what the information is, but why the contents of the black boxes or the black box happen to be where it was, the content. So it's very scary what you're looking at in the video, and frankly, how this crackhead wound up with White House tapes is astonishing to contemplate. So I say that in context. I won't say anything further about it, but I will say that if what is implied by the White House tapes that are on that laptop, if they're shown to be genuine, the emails on those laptops, 3, not 1, are shown to be genuine, then you certainly have probable cause to proceed against Hunter Biden and perhaps Joe Biden for FARA violations, Foreign Agents Registration Act violations. And there are some other ones in there: bribery, extortion, a number of other things, violation of the Secrets Act, etc. And you see, though they don't apply to Mr. Trump because he was president, and there can be no law restricting his authority that's constitutional.
Can you guess if one of these foods makes arthritis pain worse? Is it these tomatoes? Cucumbers?
Authority that's constitutional. That does not apply to Mr. Joe Biden when he was vice president of the United States and the acts were committed. There's another problem with Mr. Biden nobody wants to talk about. It's called Article 6 of the Constitution. It says, the supreme law of the land shall consist of the Constitution, laws that effectuate, that means carry out the Constitution, and such treaties as have been ratified by the Senate. There's a 1999 treaty negotiated by then President Bill Clinton. It says, well, it got ratified that same year. It says the Ukraine and the United States enter into a solemn treaty, etc., etc., etc. The parties agree that when the other signatory has proper criminal process against an individuals or an organization, the responding signatory shall apprehend, detain, and extradite the individual. That's essentially what the treaty says. So, in other words, anybody who's indicted in Ukraine, the United States, by agreement, is supposed to apprehend them if that person's in the U.S. or on U.S. controlled soil or in a U.S. controlled place, detain them, and ship them back off to Ukraine. Now, early November 2020, the Ukraine Supreme Court unsealed a long, multi-page organized crime indictment. Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are listed in that indictment as charged with extortion, bribery, solicitation of perjury, a number of other things, solicitation of treason, etc., etc., etc. And under Article 6, one of the three categories of supreme law of the United States, a ratified treaty that covers that is in existence, and I'm sure they're not going to go do it right now, but there's a grave danger to Mr. Joe Biden and his son, Mr. Hunter Biden, are getting snatched and sent over to Ukraine afterwards. Although there is that problem of what's in his head. I mean, somebody might say, well, we don't have to worry about that with Joe Biden since he seems to be losing it. Hold him a few years and we can send him over there. He won't remember anything. But then we get into Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution, which says the president or vice president, if impeached and convicted of the following three categories of offense, may be removed, shall be removed from office, and under the 12th Amendment, not allowed to hold another. One of them is bribery, and he's indicted for bribery. And two, I've heard many times, I heard it live and replayed, the C-SPAN little symposium they had where he's sitting at a conference table on stage, and this is in January the 2017 or 2018, I forget which, and he's bragging about, yeah, I guess I committed bribery and extortion against the Ukraine when I said I was going to have us withhold $14 billion in loan guarantees if they didn't get rid of this guy who's trying to get my son. Well, there's another thing. There's an interesting precedent that got set by the last Congress. After Mr. Trump was no longer president, they went after him for the second time with impeachment proceedings. They didn't get him that time either, but they set the precedent that you can go after somebody for offenses in office after they no longer hold that office. Their objective was to evoke the 12th Amendment, wherein Mr. Trump would not have been allowed to run for office again. But in this case, be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. There's Mr. Biden. So why are we in Ukraine, by the way? Are we there because it's a righteous cause that the United States should be interested in? Or are we there so that Mr. Biden can ride his way out of an indictment, and in exchange for the assistant, get the long organized crime indictment against himself and his son dismissed. Now, matter of fact, I'm surprised at one other thing is the reluctance to do anything against this congressman who can clearly be seen looking around and then reaching up on the wall and pulling down the fire alarm. Now, you grow up in the United States of America, and these days it's pretty uniform, city to city, town to town, state to state, region to region. Yeah, if you want to get out, there may be that panic bar that says, caution, opening this door may set off an alarm. That's right in front of you. But you don't see the panic bar, and then you see on the wall a little switch like that with the fire alarm on it. I don't buy that. No how, no way, even though he's presumed innocent, still proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt if he gets charged. But considering the context, that looks to me like a more rational and sound basis for bringing the charges that so many got charged with after January 6th. Now, January 6th, I want to speak to too. Since 1877, there's been a law still on the books called the Confidence in Elections Act of 1877. When that fracas took place on January 6th, that was the next item on the agenda. What it says is that if it becomes obvious that the public is showing a lack of confidence in the electoral process, the vice president shall not certify the purported electoral college results and shall call upon Congress to appoint a 15-member committee, 5 from the U.S. Supreme Court, one of which must be the Supreme Court Chief Justice, and 2 from each appointing party who are senior, 5 from the House, and whatever majority in the House gets the majority of that 5, and 5 from the Senate, same rule on the majority. As things would have worked out, that would have been 8 Republicans and 7 Democrats at the time. This committee shall take a minimum of 10 days to do an independent audit of the results, or so much additional time as is reasonably necessary to accomplish the task. 1877, they had a big mess that looked much like what happened as a consequence of November 2020. So they had this act in. Now, when this mess went down, Pelosi tabled that item, so it did not come up. But it says the vice president shall not certify. So when you're going after Trump for giving his vice president in the precise language or reasonable facsimile of what a valid U.S. Act uses, then what crime was committed? And
This has been a fascinating discussion. I appreciate you weighing in and helping us understand not only the importance of the Constitution, but having good judges. And
Well, there you have it. Another good factor that was put forward by the great Judge Joe Brown. You know what I'm saying? Laying it down all the way to town. And that's what I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying? And we need to start doing more better in the situation that we are in today, because what we're looking at today is a great many people is not paying no attention to anything, but running blindly on the demon democratical side of things, and even Republicans, crooked Republicans as well, running on the side of the demon democratical thing, and maintaining this Luciferian mathematical bullshit across the planet Earth, even when we see in Ukraine and Israel and the Palestinian situation. It still come out to the same Luciferian piece of garbage shit, and all the plans are put into play, like I said, because they owed the motherfucking piper. And at the same time, not only did they own the piper, but they also was trying to get their ass out of the hot seat after committing so many crimes. They use all this strategy to save their behinds. As you heard me say before, they're using this to no more than me save their behinds. And they figure if they can't get away with it, they're going to vaccinate your behind. You know what I'm saying? And all types of stuff. But they don't want you to believe that that's not the forte of their game. They cannot fool me at all. It is the forte of the game. You know what I'm saying? And that's all around the board, even when it comes to the voting rights and the filibuster and all these different shit. The blowing the debt ceiling roof clean off the mother and all this different shit that you see going on. It's all based on the same plan. You know what I'm saying? 20 years from now, like I said, 10 years from now, they're going to breed all these kids and children in this land, and it's going to be flooded with them, and they're going to be voting what? Demon Democrats, outnumbering the American people in all ways because they have been what? Vaccinated. You know what I'm saying? So we have to start looking at this in a more better perspective and stop being a dumbass every time we turn around. So this is Point Blank saying, stay right, stay tight, and stay listening throughout the night because we will not go quietly into the night. We must fight with every breath, every step until we come back to the great might of the country in which we know that we stand for and stand as true Americans, true United U.S. citizens of this country, not some dictatorship, authoritarian government, or communist, or any screwball jackass that wants to come in our free country and try to bring his reign. And that goes for the Palestinians as well as Israel. Israel needs to come out, and America needs to come out the bullshit. We don't need no more war. Haven't you caused enough over a decade and more? You know what I'm saying? So like I said, we must fight until we stand right. And that's Point Blank saying, good night. Farewell. We will meet again.